What's up, Zox fan? We're back with some more Etheria Restart. Now, we have to talk about buffs and nerfs, right? This is actually the period of time that the devs mentioned that they would be getting into that, right? And so I think it's just something that's good to just kind of make ourselves aware of, kind of prepare ourselves for some potential shifts and changes, especially after the display and the showcase that we've seen from the EWS. And for those of us that have been playing from day one, some of the experiences that we've been able to have with characters and also shell companions in the game, again, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. All right. So starting off, I want to start off with the characters. And the thing is that there's a character that I'm really particularly passionate about getting buffed, just because I think it is safe to say that most characters kind of do something, right? Like they do something in the game really, really well, right? Like they might not be used in everything, but I could at least say like, okay, you can like maybe pocket that character and use them over there. There's even some tweaks that I want to mention with some other characters, but this character, I will say, is coming actually from the SRs, and it's going to be Obero, right? Like I think some people heard me in the stream yesterday. I was talking about this character, and it's just one of those things where like I truly went the extra mile scaling this character up, actually 6-starring this character. Now, granted, that was on my own, like, agenda, just trying to test out different characters to see, hey, like, if you don't have a Dating, if you don't have this single target damager, like, could you use another character like a Obero? Could you use Sutomo? Sutomo actually does, like, a way more damage in, like, things like PvP, but I think the problem with Obero is bleed does absolutely nothing, right? And we talked about this, like, the potential calculation into, like, defense. We talked about the bleed procs themselves just not scaling. Like, dude, you could have like 39 of these bleed procs on something and it literally will not tick. You would barely be able to tell it ticked, right? And I think when we're talking about the inherent skill itself and like how her kit works, if you look at it, right, it's 75% chance to inflict 2 stacks of bleed. On a crit hit, reduces the target's turn meter by 45%, which is really good, right? 390% multiplier on the damage itself. And then on top of that, you have 280 on the skill 2 with a defense break, which that's not bad to have, right? And then, of course, in the skill 1, you have a speed down with the chance of bleed. But the problem is that the speed down with the bleed proc, again, if bleed actually did something, it would make a bigger difference. And I've tested this character out on count just to try to scale the damage as much as I possibly could just on the raw attack, since that the indirect damage is basically 50% of the inflictor's attack. So I tried to scale that. Obviously, the White Fang route, Revelation was brought up as a potential option for this character. No, right? Like the other issue that she has too, like with Revelation, you'll see that majority multi-hitters usually do really well with Revelation. Yeah, both her S1 and her S3 and her S2 hit once. So yeah, you just kind of get stuck with that, right? So I think like one of the things that can help a character like this is one, making sure that the bleed proc actually has some sort of like, and I think it's like actually trying to determine what that's really supposed to be. Like, is that supposed to be true damage? Like, what is that exactly supposed to be? And really making sure that bleed actually has something that makes it stand out. Because yeah, as is right now, it is pretty bad. Like, right, and I really say that about characters. Like, to be honest, she's probably the only character I've truly said that about. Just because I feel like every other character, even down to the R rarities, we could argue, Vice or Kachi or Sybil, those units are actually usable. I feel like, really honestly, if you're using Obero, you're just kind of forcing it. So yeah, I feel like she's going to be one of the characters that definitely receives a buff. There's no way that the percentages show that she's being used at all. And if she is being used, I would doubt the percentage is more than 2%. Like I don't think it would even be that high, which is unfortunate. But yeah, a character I really, really like, that I'm hoping to see something happens with her for sure. Now, next up, we got to talk about the boy, the one and only Victor. Now, he's definitely a unit that I feel like honestly should be getting more TLC and just usage in the game. I feel like what his kit provides and what it does on paper is actually really, really solid. And it was, right? Like it did a lot of things before he was adjusted. And now where he's currently at, you don't really see Victor in anything. And I think if you are seeing him in anything, it is kind of forced, right? Like there's just going to be other alternatives or better options to clear things. You're not really using Victor as an option in PvP. You're not really using him as an option for single target damage in PvE. I just feel like he doesn't really hold any actual value value in the game. So he's another one that I feel like they're going to have to adjust back upwards. And the thing is too, is like, you know, again, I got the sentiment before with why he got adjusted, because he was really oppressive, right? Like, dude was one-shotting pre-nerf Tiamats and then could like keep himself alive. Like, he was definitely what I would call, and I did a video on him a long time ago, but he was definitely started out as CN meta, where he was just kind of like the direct unit that a lot of people were going for, investing in and building. So I know some people were like, you know, it just kind of came out of nowhere and nerfed him. No, he's been pretty oppressive, and was pretty oppressive, I should say, for quite some time, and was definitely a pretty predominant and popular character. So I'm hoping to see them kind of shine some more like light, give us some more TLC, and make him popular again. I think also too, like, with the way the game is set up right now, I think single target units are definitely something that we really need to see, just overall get some TLC. Just because, like, when you really think about, like, on hand, I asked my stream yesterday, I was like, dude, like, who would you guys go, like, who are your go-to single target damagers, right? And they could only really name two. Like, it was the Ting, and then it was like Chloros, right? Which I would say is kind of sort of not where you want it to be in terms of like single target damage. I know, like, you have characters like Sybil, for example, which shout out to Barcode for shining some light on her. You definitely have, like I said, you have like the Sutomos in some scenarios where you're able to use him, but predominantly, generally speaking, it would be characters like the Ting. It would be characters like Chloros, especially if you're trying to do things like Terramatan, things like that. Hoyan, I would even say, gets a little bit of limelight there too. But other than that, like, yeah, it's really the Ting, right? So I would like to see some of the other single target damagers kind of come to the forefront, be more impactful, and also too, just the variety in that, I think also would make it to where a lot of the emphasis on like what's meta and what's being built, of course, is like spewing over into a certain thing, which we're going to talk about as well. But I feel like that would also kind of have more things being built, like the White Fang builds or the Count builds, things like that, right? So yeah, Victor, definitely a character from the SRs that I would really like to see get adjusted. Now, this one might be a little bit of a minute tweak. Let me know how y'all feel about this, but like Ren, I don't really feel like Ren needs a overhaul, but like I've been like trying to use her. I think it might also just be maybe the speed and the rotation, but I also would argue not everybody has speed or is going to have speed for quite some time. I show chat my gear, and we'll probably have a separate video about that, but yeah, I feel like Ren, the only thing I would actually really like to see on her is really maybe a slightly higher chance on the taunt and the skill 1. That's a little bit more of like a preference thing though for like PvE, not really so much of a thing that I'm looking for PvP. I will say, like, this character overall, like, she's actually pretty solid. Just the taunt being 1 turn with the 2-turn attack, like, it's like you kind of want that at 1 turn for PvP, but in PvE 2-turn actually would be kind of nice. But again, the reason why I'm bringing like taunt up in general is because taunt itself is such a strong mechanic, and there's not a lot of it. So I don't even think necessarily it needs to necessarily be her, but I also think that there needs to be more emphasis on characters that can taunt, and they do it well, right? Because I think that the thing is like we have Tiamat that can do it, we have Vice that can do it. I know Ren is a character. I might be missing a couple, but that's a really strong gimmick that you can take advantage of. If you have the bulk, you can take those hits and still not be like, say, like Shadow Flame Hoyan. You won't be actually building up the stacks if you're actually taunting. So taunting is actually a really strong gimmick that I just don't feel like gets much love like that. And there's a lot of things in the game that can be affected or afflicted by taunt. So yeah, that's something that, you know, for me personally, I would like to see. Now, are there any SSRs that I feel like are going to potentially get adjusted? Man, I mean, the thing is that, like, I feel like adjustment wise, maybe for PvP, we might see some things for Hellkid. Kind of surprised in the EWS. It could just be at the higher spectrum. You didn't see a lot of Hellkids. You really don't hear much about Hellkid as much as you would like to nowadays. I feel like that's just kind of where the game is at right now. Hopefully we do see some more with him. And that could just not even necessarily be him directly. It could just be shell adjustments that also could change like the usage of him. So I think like not really seeing Hellkid as much in PvP was kind of interesting. interesting because before he was definitely a powerhouse and a predominant unit you just kind of was scared to fight. There was a lot of other problematic things that we kind of came across this go around. I would say everybody else, I mean, certain characters like Ramoka, I think we all can agree to the fact that Ramoka is kind of sort of a one-hit wonder. Like, I think, like, especially when we're talking about the level of investment that you put into her, you're using her for the one shot for Doki Doki, but you don't use her for too much else. I mean, you could make the argument that you use her for wave clearing stuff, but I also will say, like, for her to be able to get to that threshold of one-shotting and then the utility behind it, it's like a lot of people at this point would rather just build a Shieda and then have more utility with her. But that's also in correlation, in conjunction to the shell that is accessible right now. That's kind of making the meta be the meta, and the reason why the thought process kind of exists. So I feel like, for what it's worth, I think Ramoka's fine if you can do the one shot, but even if you can't, like, you're kind of underusing her kit then at that point, because her whole gimmick is about killing, getting the cooldowns, the splash damage. Like, that's her whole entire thing. Other than that, you're just kind of better off using something that's going to be more generally spread and more consistent for the longer fight, especially because you're not getting those cooldowns off of kills. That's just kind of my thing there. I definitely would say, like, I think outside of that, I don't really see anyone else really getting nerfed necessarily. I think what we'll probably see is countermeasures is really what it is. I don't think there's going to be too many nerfs. If there are, they're going to be like small adjustments, and it could be adjustments that actually could end up being like quite massive, because that's also the issue that we have too in just all games that are turn-based, not in this game, but just like when you adjust a little thing that could drastically like change a character. Like, let's say, for example, they go and they adjust the turn meter push that you get from Freya a little bit more to like 2%, that'll drastically change how effective this character could be, right? Like, it could be something as little as that, which still is pretty monumental. But I feel like everybody else is in a pretty solid spot, whether it be PvE or PvP. Some obviously higher than others, but that's definitely some of the ones that just kind of stick out to me. Now, I want to talk about the shells, okay? Because I think there's one shell, which I think we're all aware of, in particular, that is kind of on the chopping block right now, right? And it's Revelation. And I think that this is something that kind of has the community kind of split right now, because there's validity to both sides, right? I think Revelation is really powerful. It's really strong. But I also think there are aspects of it that are being abused, right? But the thing is that in this game, we don't have a separation of PvE and PvP. I think the usage of it in PvE is not the worst, right? It's definitely not bad at all. Like, you want your multi-hitters to do stuff? Yeah, go ahead, GG. But I also think that in PvP, that has become the meta, and so much so that people are building their supports with it, people are building their DPS with it, people are building their CCs with it. People like Revelation is ridiculous, right? Like, it is very, very strong. And all it requires is a crit, and you're getting that additional true damage, indirect real damage, based off of 12% of the target's max HP. Which, again, when you're getting hit with this multiple times, it's very, very, very impressive. Now, again, there's like obviously things that we have that are like, you know, the Bloodbath or the Lighthouse, but I also feel like they're not necessarily the most straightforward or like direct counters to it, especially because you're getting hit so much, right? And I think it's also not just so much that it's just Revelation, but it's also pairings, right? So it's like Revelation on a unit that can CC. Like, that's something that's kind of like, dang, like, you know, you got to deal with that too. So it's like, I think it's the combination of it is just like kind of what makes it more oppressive than anything. Like, you have so many different ranges of what types of combinations you're getting. Like, you got, you know, the units like Yelly, who could defense break, but then also multi-hits, and then of course is getting that scaling off of, then also on top of the fact, to add insult to injury, now your defense broken, so she's just kind of self-enabling that. And we've seen Yelly like wreck havoc in the EWS. But then you got units like Kazio the Reverie, which with her, it's multi-hit, which procs this on crits. And then on top of that, she then can sleep you with the Slumber, which then is, what is that? That's 25% more scale damage. So yeah, whoever is coming up after that and hitting you, you're probably about to get deleted, right? Like, there's so many different setups with this one shell, right? And I don't know if it was really intended to be that way, to where it's like, yeah, we're about to run a whole squad of just revelations, or like, you know, like just even like the Freya revelation thing, which is super meta right now too. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it kind of almost plays into like the idea of like, say, like the Codex of Magic. And I know there's some people that's like, oh, it's not going to get touched. There's a lot of other people that are like, yeah, it absolutely is going to get adjusted. I feel like for what it's worth, I kind of think about it in the Codex of Magic situation, because Codex of Magic, I would say before Revelation, was the revelation of the game. Like Codex of Magic was like basically, it was a 3-turn cooldown initially, and you could basically rotate it to like just about a 2. And because of how it worked, like if you stun someone, like say like you use Codex of Magic on an Obel, it would stun somebody, for example. They don't get another turn, right? Like you go into another rotation, you stun them again. Like then by the time you finish, you might have 1 turn in between, but now you're cooldown back. You're already ripping your ults all over again. So Codex of Magic was really oppressive. And on top of that, it could be affected by cooldowns of characters that could, cooldowns of characters that could, or abilities that could cool down not only character skills, but also the Animus, the pets as well. So that was something that was like really oppressive. So like you would easily see like things running rampant, like Mia's with a unit on a Codex of Magic, because she could actually affect shell cooldowns. And what they really nerfed wasn't so much just the actual ability itself, but the interaction. So they increased the cooldown, which I think is where we're at now, which is the 8 turns. And then they made it to where they're not actually able to receive cooldowns from other things or outside sources. So they can't like receive a cooldown from a Mia to also make you get it faster. So that's something that I feel like we might see. There's a lot of different things that you could do, like in terms of like how often something like this procs. But again, I think that the real thing that we really have to kind of like really determine, what the dev team is really going to have to make a decision around, is really more so about how this is going to affect PvE and PvP individually. Because to be real, like I said, I think for PvE, it doesn't really matter as much. I think like it's actually kind of necessary for a lot of builds to work and just a lot of units to work the way that they work, to actually do the necessary damage to kill some of these bosses at the scaling that they're at. But then in PvP, there is the fairness and the oppressiveness that kind of comes with it. And like you could argue like, yeah, everybody can just build that. But again, that's kind of what you don't want, right? Like you are going to have people obviously that are going to do that. But then eventually you're going to want metas to shift. You're going to want alternatives and options to properly countermeasure, right? Like I think like full countermeasures are definitely something that need to be implemented. And I don't know if it's going to be necessarily like a direct buff. Like one thing, like for example, and I'm like kind of thinking about like how like oppressive that would be though. It's like, okay, like say like we take things like Lighthouse, for example, like as a potential buff candidate. But then we say like, okay, well, we'll do something as simple as making it now accessible to also be able to place Bulwark on there. That's something that can like maybe stop one of the things that you're encountering, which is like the CC combination with the Revelation, but it really wouldn't necessarily change the output of damage, right? Like I think it's just kind of that, like the output of damage after X amount of hits is still pretty oppressive. I know you still have like combinations of like the Lighthouse with like a Law of Silence on the same field, because Law of Silence does reduce group damage taken by an additional 50%. But then again, it's like like it's not changing the fact that like you can still get CC'd, which if you're not getting a turn and then you have to like now go into another rotation, then like, yeah, have fun with that, right? So there's a lot that can kind of go into that. And so I feel like, you know, for what it's worth, Revelation, to kind of sum this all up, is definitely the number one, I would say, that I feel like is going to be adjusted, whether it be interaction or whether it be like scaling. Not 100% sure what that's going to look like, but I also think that like this is definitely a big play in how the dev team kind of approaches it, because I do think for PvP, yes, sure, right? But then for PvE, it's like, no, right? Like, because I know for a fact, like for me personally, I've only built 2 Revelations, but I know like some people have built more than that. And that would definitely put some people's accounts in shambles, like especially if like majority of their damage or their PvP setups were built around this. Definitely feel like one thing that we've kind of seemed to all agree on is there needs to be another reset event for sure. How many units per reset event? Not really sure just yet. I mean, maybe one like the first one would be fine, but I definitely think that a reset event would be like really nice in between these off-season periods. So if for whatever reason, whatever adjustments are made, if players want to change things, they can. Reset events being able to carry over the shells too. Like another idea that was actually brought up was being able to have a limitation on how many shells you could bring of the same type into a fight. I feel like that, yes, it does kind of kill like the unique aspect of like diversity and builds and stuff like that, but I also don't think like it was ever intended. Like it's kind of like the same construct that I used before. Example I used before was like you running a team of 4 people on Codex of Magics. Like you can do it now, and I mean I would say pre-nerf Codex of Magics. Like pre-nerf Codex of Magics, people were doing that where they were running 4 characters on 4 Codex of Magics and they were just decimating people. Whereas like now it's a little bit more manageable. I don't even think people would do it just because it's not really high enough of a return at this point, because the cooldown is so long in between the next time that you could actually use the shell pet. So it's like that, right? Like they're gonna have to find something to kind of balance it, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to directly nerf it in the sense of what it does, but there might have to be some cooldown parameters. Things like that could also be an option. Like how many of these revelations can you actually bring into a fight? Like there's definitely things like that that they can consider. But I also think too, like really honestly trying to decide if they were going to separate PvE versus PvP, I think is also a big thing. But outside of that, I feel like every other shell, like some that we could definitely maybe see a buff for sure. Maybe Golden Lion and Dark Moon. They're in a really weird spot for me personally. Like I just don't feel like, I mean, like you'll use them in some cases, sure, but I feel like they're definitely going to be the 2 more underused shell companions for sure. Alicorn definitely has value. Codex of Magic is good. White Fang is good. Gigabyte is good. Count is definitely good. Fortissimo is great. Amber is definitely a little bit more of a play into like certain setups, like maybe Viper combo for some PvE dungeons and then like mainly PvP. Artisan is busted, probably one of the top pets in the game. Supernova is really, really good. So I feel like the other shells are actually in a pretty solid spot, but I'm interested to know what you guys feel, because I feel like, again, Revelation has been like the biggest thing like in the game, and we've known it for a little bit, but now, like I said, we're at that point where we're coming to the time of the adjustments actually happening. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Everyone, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.